In January of 2011, Amy Chua, a professor of law at Yale University, released a book called Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother. The book outraged a large majority of the American public, mainly because Chua claimed that Chinese children were more successful because their parents raised their children to be more competitive than the children of American parents. So is Chua saying that the environment surrounding Chinese children make them more competitive than American children? Or is she saying that Chinese children in general are inherently more competitive? On one hand, competitiveness may be genetically determined, but it could also arise from external influences. So let's first discuss what the evidence is for backing up the theory that competitiveness originates from nature. A study done by the National Institute of Mental Health in 2008 showed that human brains are hardwired for hierarchy. Participants played a video game that was actually rigged and were assigned a status based on their supposed skill. Then they were showed pictures, scores, and the status of other players. Although they were told to ignore this information, functional MRIs showed large amounts of brain activity associated with processing their position in the implied hierarchy. Performing better than supposedly superior players activated areas of the brain used for action planning, for possibly seeing an opportunity to rise in status, while performing worse than inferior players activated areas of pain and frustration. This innate competitiveness was present in all participants, implying that all people are born with similar instincts for competition. Competitiveness is not the same across all individuals, however. Particularly, women choose to compete far less than men. A study done by researchers at Stanford and the University of Pittsburgh found that when given a choice, 73% of men compete, while only 35% of women will compete. The men and women participating in the experiment had essentially equal ability at the tasks, but women were much less willing to compete tournament style for rewards and instead chose flat rate rewards. Similar studies have found that women are much more affected by risk aversion than men. According to a study done by Stanford University, hormones may account for many of these differences in competitiveness between men and women. High levels of progesterone, which are produced after ovulation in the menstrual cycle, were found to have sedative and anti-anxiety effects that reduce competitiveness. This matches the evolutionary hypothesis that females are more competitive during the fertile phase of their cycle to compete for males, and that women become less competitive after this when a long-term relationship becomes more important. Furthermore, competitive behavior in females was evolutionarily much more risky and dangerous to the survival of their offspring than for men who do not carry the child. All this evidence is great, but there's a lot of evidence to show that perhaps a competitive spirit isn't something you're born with, but a personality trait that is molded by your environment. In 1937, anthropologist Margaret Mead studied the Zuni Indians of Arizona. She found that the Zuni have a certain tradition where they hold a foot race that anyone can participate in. The winner is never clearly announced, and racers who continually win each race are banned from future foot races. Comparing the Zuni to multiple other cultures, Mead ultimately concluded that competitiveness is a part of human behavior significantly influenced by society. According to Mead and her research, the presence of competitiveness in a culture depends on how much that certain society values it. In another study on the nurture of competitiveness, a group of economists wanted to test whether the common belief that men are more competitive than women was true universally. They asked participants from both the Maasai tribe in Tanzania and the Khasi people of northeast India to throw balls into a basket for a reward of money for each ball in the basket. The Maasai are a strong patriarchal society where women are sometimes viewed to be worth less than cattle. The Khasi are a matrilineal society where life centers around the mother's home and inheritance and tradition is passed on through daughters. Among the male-dominated Maasai, men were more competitive in throwing the balls while women were more competitive in the female-bully culture of the Khasi. The results of this experiment affirm that a certain society's values and beliefs are extremely influential on the prevalence and variance of degrees of competitiveness within it. Education also supports the idea that environment influences competitiveness. In 1907, Dr. Maria Montessori, the first female physician in Italy, studied the learning processes of children and determined that the best kind of environment is one where the child chooses on his or her own which activities he or she wants to participate in. The Montessori classroom offers a variety of activities for students to choose from, and the teacher allows the children to work at their own pace. The Montessori philosophy was created to counter traditional, highly competitive schools. Such an educational standard for classrooms strongly suggests that the environment of a classroom or an entire academy has a significant impact on the level of competitiveness found in a normal group of students. American culture also seems to agree that competitiveness is associated with nurture, not nature. Toddlers and Tiaras is a show on TLC that follows children from 2 to 5 years old that compete in beauty pageants. The show is extremely popular among viewers because it allows the audience to see how the competitiveness of mothers rub off on their daughters and what disastrous events can result. Along with Toddlers and Tiaras, other TV reality shows suggest that the members of the show do not become such cutthroat people until they are put in such stressful environments, proving that environment most likely influences competitiveness. All in all, it seems that competitiveness is affected by both nature and nurture. Amy Chua's proposition has substantial support from both sides of the evidence, so we may never be able to differentiate the exact answer. What do you think?